You're listening to KZUM News on 89.3 KZUM Lincoln and KZUM HD. Good afternoon and welcome to today's edition of KZUM News, an hour dedicated to learning more about what is going on in Lincoln and the surrounding areas. I am the news director and your host, Amantha Dickman. Last week, we met with two Lincolnites who made national news after Congressman Mike Flood held a town hall that was met with overwhelming criticism from those attending. Today, we are hearing from more folks who attended the town hall to see if their recollections of the event match Rosina Paulini and Sarah Davis's experiences. The town hall opened its doors at 5 p.m. on August 4th. After a brief presentation by Congressman Flood, the floor was open for a question and answer session. Folks were able to submit questions online or request a chance to present them directly. Joining us first is Lincolnite John Beck. Beck attended the August 4th town hall and was among the many who posed Congressman Flood a question.
Of course. The first thing that anybody attending that would have noticed is that the line started at Kimball Hall, went all the way around the front of the Lead Center, and at least back to the loading dock. I don't know what happened beyond that, but for people that aren't familiar with downtown Lincoln, that's at least 3 blocks of people lined up to get into that meeting. I don't know how many people didn't get in, but I think it's absolutely wonderful that that many people were willing to take time out of their day to attend.
Congressman Flood did mention several times that he thought town halls like this are really important to the democratic process. Going into the town hall, do you feel like people were there and ready to be engaged?
I do think people were there. I think they were ready to engage. I think it was a foregone conclusion that it was going to be a somewhat I don't want to use contentious. It was going to be a rowdy meeting. I mean, there was little question about that. But an observation, is first off, Congressman Flood chose to start the meeting by giving misinformation about the HR 1, the bill that was just passed. I don't think that helped him. I don't think it gets the crowd on your side if they know that they're not being told. I don't want to call him a liar, but it wasn't accurate. So I don't think that helped him any, and I think that raised the noise level of the meeting. And then I think it's worth noting the very first person that asked a question from the House asked the crowd to be quiet so that she could hear the congressman's answer. And they did. I mean, they weren't perfectly quiet, but they quieted down quite a bit. And that was certainly an opportunity for the congressman to give her a genuine, thoughtful, helpful answer instead of the same canned things that he would be expected to say. Had he really been genuine with her and helpful, again, the meeting wasn't going to be quiet. There's no question about that, but it would have been quieter, I think, and I think people would have been more receptive to genuinely listening to what the congressman had to say. And I think that's too bad. For people on both sides, I think that's too bad.
Going into it, did you have any concerns you wanted to have Congressman Flood address?
I did, but I'll say just about myself that I don't really pre-rehearse things that I'm going to say. I didn't know if I was going to ask a question at that meeting. I didn't know if I was going to have an opportunity to ask a question at that meeting. And until the microphone was under my chin, I had no idea what that question was going to be. So Obviously I had concerns. I have a lot of concerns. And I don't think that the congressman did a very good job of addressing them for really any of the people that asked questions. The people that were there, rowdy, I don't think is the right word to describe that crowd. They were highly concerned, they were highly energized, and I think for the most part, there were people there who were frightened, and there are people there who are genuinely concerned about the direction our country's taking, and they wanted to be heard. I think it's I didn't make this saying up. I do not know who did, and I don't really know when the first time I heard it was, but it's that when people shout, it's often because they don't think they're being heard. And and I think that applies here. And I think had people felt that they were truly being heard and that they had been heard going into that meeting, it would have been, a much quieter and more thoughtful and maybe more respectful kind of place on both sides. I mean, I don't think the crowd was particularly respectful to the congressman, and I definitely don't think that the congressman was respectful to the crowd. I mean, his answers were not, they were answers, but they weren't answers.
So, judging by, kind of the conversations you've heard, kind of the statements that he has made, do you feel like he was receptive to the criticism?
No, no. And look, he started that meeting with both on his video monitors that were up on the stage, his slides, and his statement. One of his key statements was that HR 1, the budget bill that was just passed, does not affect Medicare. I I didn't really want to get into a discussion with him about how much it affects Medicare, but Medicare is in there with changes. I haven't read the bill in the last week or so, but I'm going to guess that there are three actual changes to Medicare in that bill. Whether they're substantial changes or not, different discussion. It certainly doesn't get affected as much as Medicaid does, but there are multiple changes to Medicare in that bill. So for him to start out his meeting by telling the audience, the participants, that there are no changes to Medicare, that really, in my mind, leaves two options. Well, three options. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Either he didn't read the bill, or he's trying to deceive people about what's in the bill, or possibly he misspoke, misunderstood the bill. If it's the third one, fine. We can discuss that. I'd be happy to sit down with him and show him the portions of that bill that affect Medicare. And I don't know that I'm qualified to get into an in-depth discussion with him of exactly how those changes affect people. Uh, it's complicated, but the basic fact that it's in there is not complicated. It's not complicated at all. It's in there. He said it's not in there. So how is that supposed to set up a productive meeting? I mean, it kind of kills the trust right out of the gate.
The town hall on Monday evening went just a little bit over time. There was still a quite a long line there waiting to ask him a question by the time he was wrapping up. But you were one of the folks who did get to ask him a question. Just for listeners, can you
Well,
kind of talk about what your question was?
sure. I mean, I didn't pre-rehearse my question. I didn't know what it was going to be, and the question was about the fact that Medicare does appear in HR 1 and his statement that it doesn't was the essence of my question. The His person that was holding the microphone and the congressman kind of cut me off mid question, so I really didn't get to pursue that with him. And that might be for the better. I don't know. It was a little frustrating at the time, but the microphone guy would not let me talk into the microphone after he realized where I was going. And that's okay. But I was grateful that I got close enough in line to ask the question. Uh, I would have been perfectly happy if the person behind me had asked a question because they might have had an even better one. I don't know. I mean, there were some excellent questions asked at that meeting. There were some very probative questions asked, and I think it was a real opportunity, a missed opportunity for the congressman to really, establish a rapport and a give and take with people who are largely his critics.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, John, for joining us this afternoon, telling us a little bit about your experience at that Monday town hall.
My pleasure.
Due to schedule limitations of the event, not everyone in the queue at Congressman Flood's town hall had the opportunity to ask a question. Joseph Moore, a local author and activist, was among those who didn't get a chance to speak on the mic. So you got there, it was already pretty busy. Getting into the auditorium, what was the energy like?
The energy was definitely there. There's no question about it. It's now I will say this about it. Which corresponds to your question you were just asking about the energy. It's a different kind of energy with this one because I noticed, like I talked with some other people after the town hall, because I every room that I go into and I scan for political reasons, just to see what's going on, who's there. You got to know the room that you're in. There weren't very many young people there. I'm a Gen Xer, my mid 50s, and it's like mostly middle aged to elderly people, but not very many Gen Zers there. So there was definitely an energy, but more mature, more like soft talking amongst each other. I ran into an old friend I haven't talked to for probably about 10 years, but it wasn't the same kind of energy. Like for instance, um, uh, when Bernie Sanders was running, for instance, I think it was the last one. I think it was 2020, well, whichever, it's either 2016 and 2020. The line stretched all the way from the lead center all the way, it was like 3 blocks basically. And that energy was different because, of course, it was college students. So it was a different kind of energy.
And so last night in the room, everyone kind of came in, we got all settled, and it was intense. It was intense, as many of the listeners.
Yeah, you can put it that way, kind of a little understatement.
I'm trying to be diplomatic.
No, no, that's fine. That's fine.
But as our listeners have already heard, there was a lot of crowd feedback for
Oh yeah.
Congressman Flood. What do you think the message there was being sent? What message was being sent there?
Well, I mean that they're educated and they can read. We know what's in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill Act because now it's of course law. So you can say law or act, whichever. About the Medicaid for those, the general population, those who are younger who need needs for financial needs and perhaps disabled, and then Medicare, of course, for the elderly. And we read about the hundreds of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions being cut from the program as a whole, according to the local Democratic Party. Uh, uh, as in, I forgot, it was either Lancaster Dems or it was Nebraska Democratic Party. I forgot which one because I read it on their Instagram post. I didn't realize it was like 78,000 Nebraskans were expected to lose their coverage. So and I remember the day that Trump had signed, I believe, before he even signed it, the one big beautiful bill into law. I remember reading and hearing about that one. I forgot the institution. It's actually in Curtis, Nebraska, I believe, where it's already shutting down. They announced that they were shutting down even before it signed into law. So, and there, we all read, those of us who are educated and pay attention, we know what's going on. So that was kind of the message. And like I said to you, I think before we started recording this video, was that the important point, at least for me, speaking as progressive, was to show that we're here, and I don't, I'm not scared of Trump. I know a lot of other people are, but I'm definitely not, and I'm not afraid of his henchmen and all this other and henchwomen, because think about Pam Bondi, and now they're hauling you today, a bit of news. Now they're hauling in Hillary Clinton and former President Bill Clinton, supposedly questioning about since the Bill Clinton's name came up, the Epstein files. Well, that's interesting. Why don't you haul in your president Trump, because his name was in it several times. Attorney General Pam Bondi even told him that his name appeared several times.
So obviously, being there, being loud, and making your discontent was one of your priorities last night.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
do you think that Congressman Flood got that message?
Well, yeah, he is. I know how to play chess. I haven't played in a while, but I know how to play chess, and I love to use chess as a metaphor, Amanda. Never underestimate your opponent that you're playing. I used to use the word enemy though, because given what the Republican Party is now, they are truly an enemy. Because the diversity, equity, or DOI, whatever they call it. It's funny because they're the one who tends to focus more on that than we do. But so yeah, as an African American, yeah, you have policies that are against me, so I'm going to call them my enemy. So in playing chess, you can't not underestimate your enemy when you're playing them. So I'm sure Flood got the message. He understood.
And did you leave the town hall feeling like he was listening to you, not just that he had
No,
heard that?
absolutely not. Absolutely not, Amanda. He's besides being there and listening to him, I was also, like I said, watching the reaction on the professional or the establishment media, MSNBC, BBC, Bloomberg. I never listen or read right wing stuff, so it's more centrist stuff that I read and watch. And just reading and listening to his reaction, he seemed like he basically repeated his talking points for the most part. And if you were there and he had us literally slides, which is fine, whatever slide presentation, but he would fall back on those slide presentations versus using critical thinking and responding versus answering the questions, is how I would put it.
So by the end of the night, did you feel like the town hall was worth the time in going?
Oh, absolutely. You should, to me, especially in for what it's worth in the democracy that we have. But yeah, you absolutely should make your positions heard. It's our taxpayer money, regardless of which side they are. We're paying for these people's many days off that they get paid for. Those are our taxes paying for their salaries and everything that goes with it. So yeah, I mean, you should be there because it's your money, and as a even if you're a citizen or just visiting from another country, you still contribute because you pay taxes when you consumption taxes. Because even if you're not, even if you're illegal immigrant, which I don't believe in that concept, you're still it's kind of like taxation without representation because you're paying for consumption tax.
Appreciate the shout out. And then, of course, going into last night, what were your main concerns that you wanted to bring up to Mr. Flood?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Amanda, because and standing in that line you were talking about earlier is a very long line. I was, you know, one of the things that I think a lot of Democrats and progressives, those who talk to the Democrats, we kind of got the message about a lot of people were saying, well, part of the reason why we lost not just the presidential bid last year, 24, was because the woke crowd, as you can see the shirt I'm wearing here, this is considered woke, talking about the culture wars and all that. And I wear this as an ally. I'm actually straight, but I'm a strong believer in LGBTQ rights. That's because we were encouraged not to too much preach about the culture stuff, LGBTQ rights and DEOI and all that other stuff, and more bread and butter, kitchen table issues, economy and all that. In other words, I guess we were getting a little out of hand talking about equal rights. So now we got to pare it down, apparently. So, but for me, of course, I was thinking about the Medicare, Medicaid situation connection to the $3.8 trillion deficit. You know, just actually just the taxes, the, the tax cuts for the millionaires and billionaires from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that's going to be given to millionaires and billionaires. That's just that. That's not everything over the 10 years. So I was thinking about that, but everyone else focused on that. So then I was thinking about the Gaza situation, where now it's approaching 61,000 Gazan civilians killed by the Israeli Defense Force and by the Netanyahu prime ministership there in Israel. But you know, I didn't get you the mic, but that's okay. Like I said to you before we started this call, Amanda, for me, even if we didn't get a chance to get to the mic, having our presence there, showing that we're not afraid of Trump, we're not afraid of these right wingers. We're going to ask our questions. It's our tax money. We have every right to ask and and not just ask, but to also make statements. We have every right to do that.
And of course, I don't have any other questions about last night.
But thank you very much, and it's good talking to you.
Lincoln resident Renee Carrillo was also among those at the back of the queue who did not get a chance to speak with Congressman Flood. But we here at KZUM News were able to discuss the events of August 4th with him.
I say it was probably around 4:15, almost 4:20, I think, when I walked up, and the line had already made it down the steps towards the lead center. And then right there where it meets the sidewalk was where I joined in, and then people started filing behind me going towards the lead center. So I'd say I was probably about halfway through by the time we had everyone in line. Came in at the halfway point of how long it got.
So quite a few people there.
Oh yeah, yep. There were a bunch of people that had signs, or this one gentleman had like a puppet stick figures of Donald Trump and Mike Flood, and Mike Flood had a dog collar on, basically, you know, saying that he's just toting the line for Donald Trump.
And so we got into the room, and there was a lot of public feedback there that evening. The general overwhelming sound, at least based on how it sounded to us, was that people aren't really satisfied with how our representatives are representing Nebraskans. Would you say that's your position and why you were there that evening?
Yeah, absolutely. I was there, yeah, to let him know how I feel about some of the choices he's made. Let him know that he has failed the Nebraskans, and is being detrimental to citizens outside of Nebraska as well. But yeah, like seeing the crowd when I got there, I was kind of anticipating it to be mostly against, but I was just curious if there was going to be any supporters. And there were probably about 6 or so in the front rows, and then probably throughout the whole arena, there might have been like 15 tops, I guess. They weren't as vocal. If they were, you definitely couldn't hear them because there was too much opposition. And I'm pretty sure, like the people behind me in line, they were conservatives, you know, and ever since 2016, they have kind of shifted away from the Grand Ole Party, just saying that they are not representative of their values anymore. And it's just become a clown show, and they're not happy with it. And Mike Flood is just another person toting that line, and they want to let them know that they're not happy with that. So it was good to see that it wasn't, you know, a party line issue, that it spanned everyone.
That's fascinating that you had a chance to talk to the folks who were in line with you to ask questions. Was pretty loud in there, so your hearing must be incredibly impressive.
Oh yeah, no. Well, that was like in line before we even got in. When
Gotcha.
we were discussing stuff, and they did like the puppets because they came by, and that's kind of what sparked off the conversation between us.
I see. And then you also were in line to ask questions of Mike Flood. He had a kind of a queue there where folks could join in and try to talk about their main concerns. Going into the town hall, what were your main concerns that you wanted to vocalize with Congressman Mike Flood?
They were all addressed within like the first 4 or 5 people, I think, that went through. Medicare and Medicaid for all. would be my ideal situation. It saves everyone money. It streamlines the process. And it kind of gives the power back to the people rather than in the hands of corporations that are insurance companies. They're just the middlemen that don't really facilitate anything yet. For some reason, we're allowing them to deny people health care, and that's not right. The other thing were military support. The veterans that come back, like their program has been crap from both sides. It's been a struggle trying to get Democrats in office and Republicans in office to do the right thing for them. That was addressed and brought up. And then our fascist takeover, where they're starting to illegally detain and illegally capture people. Like it's just people. Like they're citizens of this nation. Like they are in our borders. We should care for them and get them proper citizenship. Instead, we're basically making them a commodity and putting them in a camp where we're stealing money from everyone else to pay these rich people that are housing them. That's not right. And I was concerned that Nebraska might be a location where they would do that. And shortly thereafter this event, I did see news articles coming out where that is a prospect. So.
And you were not the only person to voice these concerns. As you said, plenty of people were in line asking questions about Medicaid, about our involvement in various political endeavors abroad, and our current situation with ICE. Do you feel like Mike Flood was receptive to any of these questions while he was up there kind of trying to engage in this conversation?
As receptive as a rubber ball. I mean, everything was just bouncing right back out. Like, I don't think he ever answered an honest question. He would deflect. He was very staunch on that they saved Medicaid. That's just like a half truth that's not even really all that true. They've defunded so much from so many aspects of healthcare. That little bit that he claims they saved isn't doing anything. It's not going to do anything. So yeah, I really don't think he was receptive at all. He was very standoffish. He went back to his notes. It is shocking that their leader, not Trump, but I think it was Mike, can't remember his name, had told all the rest of the Republicans not to do these town halls, right? Yet Mike Flood still goes out there to do these. And it's very apparent why they don't want them to, because it's apparent to everybody that we aren't happy with the way they're representing us, and it's going to cause backlash. And yeah, he wasn't receptive at all. He didn't take anything in.
Now, when we sat down with Mike Flood, he kind of talked about these town halls being important to the process of democracy. So do you feel like it was worthwhile to go to it if you didn't think he was particularly receptive to the feedback?
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that everyone else there saw how it went and had seen the previous two town halls. And we remember come November when we're doing our voting again, that he does not represent us. He doesn't have our best interest in mind. And that is not someone we should be voting for. So if anything, I'm hoping that kind of is solidified in these people's minds that went there, and that they share that experience with everyone else, so that we can actually turn over and get a new representation. But yeah, no, thanks for the interview. I don't have anything else.
Perfect. Well, then thank you so much for joining us today, Renee, to talk a little more about Monday's town hall. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care.
While many of the folks we have spoken with cited their attendance to Congressman Flood's town hall as a way of communicating feedback over his recent voting history, a portion of those in attendance had nothing but praise for Congressman Flood. Others felt he was under unfair scrutiny. When we return from our mid-hour break, we'll be sitting down with City Council member Tom Duden and then hearing from Congressman Flood himself. Stick around to hear more. And welcome back to today's episode of KZUM News. My name is Samantha Dickman, and I am the KZUM News Director and your host for today's episode. Last week, we sat down with Sarah Davis and Rosina Paulini, two Lincolnites who have made national headlines for the questions they posed to Congressman Flood at the town hall he hosted on August 4th. Today, we heard from others who attended the town hall, including John Beck, Joseph Moore, and Renee Carrillo. While many of the folks we have spoken with cited their attendance to Congressman Flood's town hall as a way of communicating feedback over his recent voting history, a portion of those in attendance had nothing but praise for Congressman Flood. Others felt he was under unfair scrutiny. Republican City Council member Tom Duden also attended Monday night's town hall, but unlike many of the folks we spoke with, he said that the decibel levels in criticism were not a reflection of unhappiness with Congressman Flood's work. So, obviously you were one of the first ones into the room. As everyone's kind of filing into you, like in after you, how would you have described the atmosphere in that room leading up to the start of the event?
I thought it was very orderly, calm, seemed, kind of normal.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that changed over the course of the night?
Oh, yes. In fact, I was embarrassed and I felt bad for Mike being up on stage. I thought the crowd was extremely rude, and not everybody. I saw some people that were just sitting there to listen to the questions and to the answers. But there were so many interrupters and hecklers there and I thought that they were just purposely there just to do just that. And that seemed kind of, to me, counterproductive because I've known Mike Flood for a while and he's extremely transparent. He really wants to do these town halls. He thinks it's an opportunity for him to explain his rationale on voting, and I commend him for that. He doesn't want anybody arrested. He wants everybody there to practice their free speech, but at the same time, he wants the opportunity to listen to the questions and answer the questions at the same time. And I felt like the rowdiness of the crowd kind of inhibited that substantially.
I know that we've talked to several people about Monday's town hall. One of the things that we've heard the most from folks in attendance is that, they kind of felt that the volume levels within the room were a way of sending a message to Mr. Flood. Do you think that Congressman Flood, about, his approval ratings or whatever here in Nebraska, do you think that Congressman Flood viewed it in that same manner?
No, I do not. In fact, I interpreted that several people that were in the room specifically to disrupt the town hall meeting. There were people that went up to the microphone with their platform and statements that they wanted to make. And in some of those, I had a hard time figuring out what the question was. It seemed like they wanted to assert their opinions and point of view, and really we're not looking for an answer to a question.
In those cases, did you think that they were just, making a statement then?
Yes.
And so, of course, it was an hour and a half of very high decibel levels, for lack of better terms. By the end of the night, do you think that Congressman Flood felt, discouraged, or do you feel like you as a local representative in our government felt discouraged by the public feedback at that town hall?
I think Mike felt that he did his job.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be transparent. This is an opportunity for people to ask him all sorts of questions. And I guess, people do have a right to vent. I've always said that, even in my own arenas. And then sometimes once the venting's over with, you can get to the root of the problem and have a conversation, and at the same time collect maybe some different viewpoints, and maybe it'll modify how we as politicians react to different problems and what have you.
And then, of course, I know afterwards, he said very much the same thing. And he talked a little bit about, continuing this process next year, thinking about future years and future town halls. Do you think that you might see that same kind of reaction in future town halls if you were to host another one?
I watched a representative in Wisconsin that was on C-SPAN that had a town hall, and the conduct was very much the same in Wisconsin as it was what I saw at Kimball Hall in Lincoln, Nebraska. I just think there are certain people that no matter what are always going to be upset with some of the decisions that political individuals make when they're in office, and that's their right to do that. The place that they can make the biggest statement is at the ballot box, and we elected Congressman Flood. President Trump was elected. And so accordingly, you're going to see some of their policies and what have you implemented into our government processes. And some people accept it, some people don't. And I don't think that it seemed like what I kind of heard Monday night is people still expect to get everything for nothing. They're looking for free things. And I just don't think that we can continue down that road of always offering free services without some strings attached. And I think the government has been very good about taking care of those that really need it. And I think it's okay to expect a few strings attached on some of those free things when people are capable of working part-time, doing some things that the government asks them to do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for joining us this afternoon, Tom. I appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule, especially since you mentioned school is starting again, and have a lovely afternoon.
You bet. You take care. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Bye.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Following the hour-and-a-half town hall, Congressman Flood met with members of the media for a question-and-answer session regarding how the night had gone and his response to the public feedback.
This is my third town hall. I did one in Columbus, Nebraska, I did one in Seward, Nebraska, and here I am in Lincoln. This is part of the process. This is the town square. Sometimes it's the loudest voices, sometimes it's some of the quietest. They're all here to take in democracy at this level, and it's my job to answer their questions. A great majority of people in the 1st Congressional District see things in line with, I think, where I am on a lot of the issues. That doesn't mean we're always right. And putting yourself in this situation gives me an opportunity to hear what the concerns are out there, one of which I heard a few times was VA funding. I met with the VA secretary a couple months ago. I went through all of this. I need to put my notes out. I need to verify them with him before I put them out, and I need to be very clear about why I think, and I'm touring a VA hospital this month while I'm back, about why I think our veterans are being taken care of. And I need to stand accountable for that, because that's a question that I do care about. I got the answers. I didn't have them in front of me tonight because I hadn't heard anything at the last town hall. But hey, if it's important to them, it's going to be important to me. It doesn't mean you can make everybody happy. But, you know, I think if you feel strongly about what you're doing in Congress, then stand in the town square, tell them why you voted that way, listen to their questions, treat them with respect, and invite them to continue to communicate with you. I don't know. I saw some folks in the audience here that I knew weren't for some things, but were for other things. NIH funding, for instance, some things that I care about. So they took advantage of taking a step like that. And hopefully they'll walk away and they say, well, we don't agree on ABC, but we agree on DEF. Isn't that all you can ask of your government? Like, the petition you're going to come here.
Surprise you? Did you learn anything new tonight about what the people who don't like the bill and don't like the president think? Did it? Or was it?
It's fair to say that my constituents tonight were very spirited. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there about the big beautiful bill. And I know the first thing that I think we have to do as a country is we have to explain the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. And the reason I hit that really hard at the beginning is that I get calls from people that are maybe 78 years old, maybe the onset of dementia. They hear this vitriol on whatever channel they're watching, and they think that their health care is literally going away. And so you all would do a great favor to, I think, the country by helping explain just the difference between Medicare and Medicaid, because I bet if you went on the street, less than 80% of the people know the actual difference. There were changes to Medicaid, which do matter and which will impact the system and the states that provide it. I voted for the bill because the state-directed payment system, while reduced a little bit, still meant $700 to Nebraska hospitals. Work requirements in a state with 3% unemployment and lower doesn't worry me a bit, and not giving benefits to illegal immigrants, that's been our law since 2008, since I was the Speaker of the Legislature. So from my standpoint, when I say I protected Medicaid, I feel like it. Now, if I was in a different state with a different Medicaid program with different rules and different norms, maybe it's a different deal there. But I really feel like not only can Americans, 70 or 80% of Americans agree with some of those stipulations. And here's what I'd say. If you have a vulnerable loved one that's on Medicaid, and they find it's harder to continue their services to get that free health care, and they clearly need it, that was not what I voted for. If we have to make tweaks to the implementation to make sure that those who truly need it get it, and it is not a burden to their caregiver or them, then we need to make those tweaks. We need to protect them, and we need to make sure we do not cause them any extra strain. That's the last thing they need in their situation.
Representative Tom Beaumont, the Associated Press.
Yes.
Medicaid seems to be the point of the
Yes.
most pointed opposition. Do you think that there is misinformation about what people understand about the changes made in the bill, or do you think that this represents something that Republicans are going to have to answer for more directly?
Well, based on the calls that come into my office, I knew what I wanted to communicate in the first 5 to 10 minutes was Medicaid, 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 Medicaid. And I wanted to specifically say, based on the votes I made and the work we did behind the scenes, we protected Medicaid. The president wanted us to protect Medicaid. I represent, as the caucus leader of the Main Street Caucus, 83 conservative, business-like Republicans that have come from legislators that know what the Medicaid program is. It's seen a huge expansion since the middle of last decade. And this is the first time we've engaged in entitlement reform in, 20 years. So, yes, I think it's important we communicate. Am I upset that some of my constituents are seeing it differently? I think there's been a lot of rhetoric out there from different advocacy groups that have said we're kicking vulnerable people off Medicare. I had somebody come at me in a parade. Her brother was in a wheelchair, clearly wasn't able to work, or he was clearly disabled, and she, I'm sure, was his caregiver. And she's like, she was saying to me, "You've taken his health care." And I was like, no, that's exactly who we want to have Medicaid. He can't work. He needs it, and we need to protect you, and we need to support you as a caregiver, if that's the case. And so, I do think we have to be in the town square, and this is not going to get better if we don't show up at events like this and say our piece.
Can I just ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
Richard Hudson has said he doesn't think this is productive.
This is productive for me.
So, yeah.
I have to do this to do my job. Like, if I don't show up here, first of all, I promised people when I ran that I would do it. My predecessor did this 17 years in a row. I'm always going to be in Lincoln, Nebraska. I think that you have to go to places that are comfortable and uncomfortable. If you want this job, you got to show up. You got to answer their questions. You got to treat them with respect. Like, I went out and shook as many hands as I could from the minute these doors before they opened, and I talked to people directly. I said, "Come see me in the office." I think it's important, and I want them. There's sometimes people just, I represent the federal government to them in whatever form, just in my role as a congressman. Somebody says they don't like the way something was said, or by the president or whatever. I need to be there to listen to it, and ultimately I need to tell them what I think. So I did that. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I think this doesn't get better unless we show up in the town square.
Follow up to that, do you think that other Republicans within your caucus are doing the same? Do they listen?
It's up to each member. Some of the more senior members that have been there 22 years, like, their constituents know where they're at on the issues. I've only been in office 3 years. I've never encountered any of these issues before as a state senator because we just didn't have these kind of issues. We had different ones. But I think as long as I've been in 3 years, I'm going to be out here answering the questions because they got to find out where I'm at on the issue.
Sorry to do you think you convinced anyone out there tonight?
I think so.
Really?
Maybe I do. Hard. I can see where somebody would be skeptical, but I have the vantage point of looking at everybody's faces, and you stand up there long enough, somebody was booing you 1 second, and then 5 minutes later I see them kind of smile or a small clap. The loudest voices in the room suck all the energy out, and that's just America today, right now. And performative politics is what it is. I try to remind people that I do my best work as a legislator in Congress, not on the TV screen. And I know people would love it if I showed up on the TV every night, airing whatever grievance I had on whatever issue. I want to go to Washington. I want to do things. That's why I talked about results and growth and protecting Medicaid. So every member of Congress has to do it their way. This is the way I've done it, but this is my third and final one for the year. I think I've done 3 town halls, and we're going to give you all a break.
Congressman, is President Trump giving you all enough cover as you go out and talk about a reconciliation package for those members like you who are going out and doing town halls?
I mean, we're all out there. The House Republican Conference and Leadership, they've been out there. And, I think even Richard Hudson would say, we have to go out and tell our story. Like, you have to show up there. So I do. I feel like it's okay. Did you have a question?
I'd like to ask more about the Big Beautiful Bill. You talked a lot about spending, and last time at the sewer town hall, you put the big.
Yeah, I would have done that again, but they don't have the drop down here.
Well, I guess one thing I wanted to notate is that the Congressional Budget Office says that this will actually increase borrowing by $4.1 trillion over the next 10 years, and add about $5.5 trillion to the U.S. debt. So how do you kind of justify passing this?
Well, there was a great Wall Street Journal article on this, I think, yesterday. I'd have to go back and look at it. But essentially, Democrats and Republicans, depending on who's in office, see the CBS score. You can disagree about it. So in 2012, when President Obama was extending the George W. Bush tax cuts, the question is, where do you set the baseline? Do you set the baseline where the policy is going to go at the end of the year, or do you bake that tax cut in under the same economic conditions that you have? That's the crux of what that question is about. In 2012, President Obama and his economic team said, we're gonna bake it into the baseline like it is, and they disagreed with the CBO score when they extended the Bush tax cuts. That's what I believe we're doing here. You can't grow the economy by upping everybody's taxes. You can't grow the economy by taking away the child tax care credit, or not having affordable housing, LIHTC tax credits, or messing with the standard deduction, or taking away the family farm. Those things aren't acceptable. And I bet if you ask Democrats if they were acceptable, maybe in a different setting, they'd say no. They're not acceptable either. We do this. If the Democrats were in charge right now, they'd be extending a lot of these tax cuts. I'm confident of it. And the reality is, you can't have one without the other. You got to grow the economy, you got to cut taxes, or keep them low.
So why not tax just the highest earners, the top 1% then?
Well, I hear that all the time, and the reality is, when I was at my first town hall in Columbus, Dusty Johnson from South Dakota and I talk about this all the time. You can implement the millionaire's tax that President Biden talked about in the last Congress, it gets you $50 billion. And on top of it, you're taking $50 billion from the people that are supposed to be creating the jobs. So it isn't the panacea that people think it is. I love the question tonight, or at least the opportunity we had to talk about, the more Medicaid you spread around, the less commercial insurance is out there, the more commercial payers have to pay more to cover the delta between the two, and the deeper in the hole you get. And so, that's why employers, that's why a lot of people have a 50% employer premium pay when it used to be way higher than that 20 years ago.
Congressman.
Oh, let's see. Want to go?
Yeah. Congressman Flood, how can you not see today's town hall and the previous two that you've had this year as kind of a sign that perhaps like this Congress is overstretching and that maybe you're not meeting voters where they're actually at? I mean, even if it was majority Democrats that were like heckling, how should we interpret what happened today at the town hall?
Well, President Trump easily won this district. He easily won this state. People tonight were spirited. They care about the democracy. They care about the decisions that are being made, and it's become a political tactic to scream and yell. Sometimes to the point where nobody here, even the people that maybe disagreed with me, wanted that guy to be taking all the time. I just think we have to live through this time. We have to get to a place where there's calmer minds, right? And one thing that I can do for myself is I conduct myself in a way that I think is respectful. I tend to. I don't overreact, answer people's questions, and I let them do the reacting. I specifically tell the police, I do not want people taken out of here. Like, this is their right. So I suppose I could probably hold a town hall where we use the resources of law enforcement to clear people out. That's not what I want. I specifically want them to be able to have that right of redress. And I do think, even though it may not seem helpful, the fact that somebody came here tonight and had the opportunity in whatever way they chose to tell me exactly how they feel, they got that opportunity. And there has to be something positive in that for them. And I want them to do it without the fear of any kind of consequence. And I have a lot of Nebraskans that say, why don't you have people taken out? Because I don't want them taken out.
Forget the hecklers who are just being disruptive. That's disruptive. But the questions were substantive and hard, and
they've been that way every time.
And deeply concerned about.
And by the way, those are not paid protesters. Those are people from.
No, I know, but just the respectfully asked questions were tough and concerned. So.
Hey, this is a smart state. This is a smart city. This is the home to the University of Nebraska. We've got exceptionally bright people here that have different varying thoughts on the issues. I like to think that I was able to answer their questions. They may not agree with my answer, but the questions are always good, and that makes me a better member of Congress. When you represent a district like this and you see the acumen of a lot of those folks out there, you better have good answers because you've got exceptional constituents that have a really good ability to frame up an issue.
So based on those intelligent questions that you were getting tonight, what do you think your top priorities are to take back to Washington that you received?
Well, as the Main Street Caucus chair, the number one thing I want to do, and this is the number one thing, I want to pass a budget. I want our appropriators to pass a budget. I want to see compromise between Republicans and Democrats. I do not want to talk about rescissions. I do not want to talk about legislative gymnastics. I want it to take 60 votes in the Senate. I want our community project funding priorities put in there. We did that in every legislature, and that's how it works the best. I don't want to pass a CR that has the Biden White House priorities and the Schumer Senate priorities and the Republican House priorities. I want it to be our budget, and I want it to address things like NIH funding and all that other stuff. So.
And do you think that reflects what was being asked tonight?
I think people care about that stuff, yeah.
Congressman, can I go back to the role that President Trump is playing in making the case for the reconciliation package? Is he doing enough to help Republicans make the case to constituents? And if so, how?
The president, of course, in his own style, we had the bill signing on July 4th, which I wasn't able to be at. He's since brought all the members of Congress to the White House to talk about messaging. He's out there every day talking about it. I'm out here every day talking about it. But this is not a messaging game you win from Washington. This is a messaging game you inspire people in Lincoln. Like,
I can't expect him to come to Lincoln, Nebraska and fight my fight for me. I voted for this. I voted for this bill. I'm here. I'm defending it. And I'm not just defending it, I'm supporting it. And I'm hoping to get the attention of those that I represent that disagree with it and tell them why I think that bill is going to make a huge difference. Yes.
I want to give you an opportunity to answer a question one of your constituents had about Maxwell and whether or not you would hold the president accountable and pardon.
What I said tonight was I am I'm adding my name to the resolution from the Rules Committee members to get the Epstein files out there. Obviously, you got to protect the victims. You don't want to re-victimize them. I support Jamie Comer bringing Ms. Maxwell to the Oversight Committee under a subpoena. This should happen, and ultimately, all I can do is vote for it, and I hope I get the chance to do that in September. But I don't want it to. I want to get the budget done too.
And pardoning Maxwell?
I haven't even thought about that.
Would you hold the president accountable? Was the question.
Oh, well, first of all, the president gets to make the decision whether to pardon or not. That's a power that only the president has. I do not want to pardon anybody that is engaged in a conspiracy or any kind of criminal enterprise to sexually traumatize and abuse adolescents, juveniles, any child. And neither does most of America.
I've got one more about Medicaid. You talked about, giving you protect Medicaid, with the
Yes.
$50 million for rural housing.
Well, I think in Nebraska, when you add the state-directed payments of $700 million plus our access to the $50 billion, plus the fact that we have common sense requirements or work requirements, and that, yes, I do.
I just want to point out that overall, nearly $1 trillion is being cut to Medicaid with the big beautiful bill. So how do you kind of justify, $50 billion is only 5% of that?
I think Americans expect people to work if they're going to get free health care. If you can work and you choose not to work, you shouldn't get free health care. And we've had an election about illegal immigration, and I think the Republicans won that election. People expect our benefits to be going to citizens and not illegal immigrants.
Congressman, tonight you mentioned the One Big Beautiful Bill was something that had things that you liked, or it wasn't a perfect bill, but was there anything in that package that you didn't like, or would have rather see come out differently?
I'm sure, we went through this whole negotiation on all this stuff. I'm sure there are things that you can't do enough on housing for me, because housing is my passion. I want to see more affordable housing. I was very happy to see the light tax credits included in there. We're 5 million units short, and so anytime I get a platform to talk about our need to create affordable housing, I want to do that. So.
Congressman, did anything surprise you in today's town hall?
Well, not really. I knew coming to Lincoln was going to be different than the two rural communities I was at. I would say the decibel level was up there, pretty good. But no, nothing really surprised me. I feel like I was prepared for this.
Did you find that your blood pressure was going up at
Nope.
any point?
Nope. I just, I knew a long time. I was the Speaker of the Legislature, and we had the Keystone XL pipeline fight, and it was red hot. It was back in 2011, and I learned a lot of lessons about navigating choppy waters in a policy area in a very contentious national issue. And I think that experience with Keystone XL pipeline, we rerouted it in Nebraska, prepared me for nights like this.